it was always
last night.
if you're
was
0-2,
that
you might as well throw out the rest of the season.
All of the
You're just not going to make
noise.
It was only like a handful of teams, holdouts, who's in camp, who they even gave us stats to back up this
that
law
for the 49ers.
And here's the problem with that stat.
This team,
bad teams,
the number
are
one
always
skill,
going to find a way to start.
This is a Mark Schlereth thing.
That's the reality.
Skill is
in the NFL, it was always if you're 0-2, you might as well throw out the rest of the season. You're just not going to make the playoffs.
Noise,
it was only like a handful of teams that ever made
holdouts,
right?
who's in camp,
they even gave us stats to back
all
up
this
law
for the 49ers.
And here's the problem with that stat.
This team,
bad teams,
the number
are
one
always going to find a way to start 0-2.
This is a Mark Schlereth thing.
That's the
number
reality.
one skill is
Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Thank you so much for tuning in. Listen, the next thing I'm about to say, we all know is true, even though we don't all like to admit that it exists. Privilege is a real thing. And while there is absolutely forms of privilege that exist that have nothing to do with your own individual skill, abilities, performance, privilege exists, and especially greatness privilege exists. So everyone's taking their chance today to swing at Aaron Rodgers, and he did an interview that he normally does on the Pat McAfee show, and everyone's going at him for him going, I didn't know anything about the Robert Saleh decision. I was totally blindsided. And well, yeah, the guy who was immunized, not vaccinated, the guy who decided, hey, I'm going to take a trip to Egypt and not tell anybody, the guy who's basically become a conspiracy theorist and part-time quarterback, that guy's probably hard to trust. And no, do I think that he knew absolutely nothing about the Robert Saleh firing? No, I don't believe that. But it's everyone's taking their turn today to kick him. He's a liar. He's a bad teammate. There's guys who we would not normally talk about who are now being brought up and saying, well, yeah, I talked to this one wide receiver who played for the Packers 10 years ago, and he said A-Rod was a horrible teammate. Man, he said he was a jerk. You have Jason McIntyre, who works with Colin, who's going, who's been all Jets, all A-Rod. Oh, my gosh, Rodgers is so great. Oh, my gosh, Rodgers is the savior. Another guy on FS1, Craig Carton, who's been, oh, my gosh, Aaron Rodgers is the savior. Aaron Rodgers is so great. Have been singing his praise for the whole offseason and all of last year, even though he was hurt. And now they're even turning on him. Listen, we might not like it because we're just simply not able to do some of the things these pro athletes can. Can't do a lot of the things they can, actually. And one of the things they get to do when they're great, even amongst the other great players, they get away with stuff. Again, this has now happened 2 seasons in a row where, and it does not matter the personality, Russell Wilson, when he was putting up Hall of Fame level stats, was on track to be in the Hall of Fame, was winning Super Bowls, getting to Super Bowls, putting up 4,000-yard seasons for the Seattle Seahawks. No one was worried about his personality. No one was saying he's super corny. Even if he was winning and he was being productive, so we didn't care. That's the privilege of greatness. Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, he's probably been to this level of teammate, good or bad, the entirety of his career. When he's winning MVPs, he's throwing for 4,500 yards. He's setting all these records for touchdowns, interceptions. He's the free play king. Nobody cares. Even go to the highest level. Tom Brady. The greatest we've ever seen. Just this, and this is just only because he's had time removed. There were Buccaneers players complaining about Tom Brady the way he acted in Tampa. That he was overbearing, it was always stressful. And even Baker came out and said, look, yeah, I kind of agree with him. It probably is. It was stressful. It was hard. It wasn't a fun environment. And Baker's more laid back, and Baker's more this. And Tom said, look, I was trying to win. I wanted to win. If I wanted to have fun or relax, I'd take my kids to Disneyland. And he's right. And when you are great, like Russell Wilson in his prime, when you are great like Aaron Rodgers in his prime, when you are the greatest ever like Tom Brady, you get away with that stuff. That's not just in football, that's in all sports. And really, I don't mind. I don't have any agenda or any care to really defend Aaron Rodgers. He's never played on a team that I've rooted for. I've never been, while I've enjoyed watching him play, I've never been a super fan of the player. So everybody kicking his Aaron's back in today really doesn't move me. I just don't like the dishonesty that we're all now suddenly shocked and appalled by the way that he's acted. When this has probably been his behavior his entirety of his career, he's just not as good as he once was. And say what you want about privilege. And it does exist. And it's there. And again, nobody really loves the privilege that is just because of how you were raised or how you look. But when you have the privilege of greatness, me personally, I'm much more willing to concede that when you are great, you are productive, you are contributing something at a much higher level than the average person can, then yeah, we're gonna let a couple things slide for you. You don't maybe have to be the nicest guy in the world. Would it be great if you were? Obviously. But maybe you don't have to be the greatest teammate if you're the most talented thrower of the football we've ever seen. Maybe you don't have to be the coolest guy in the room or be great in the locker room if you're getting Seattle to its first Super Bowl win in franchise history. You don't have to be fun and entertaining and laid back if you're Tom Brady and you're winning 7 Super Bowls. So again, privilege is real, and the privilege that comes with greatness, let's not act like we don't all endorse it. We don't all allow for it. Because Packer fans, you weren't complaining in 2011. You weren't complaining a few years ago when he won his 4th MVP. Jets fans weren't complaining when he started the season, even though he only lasted 4 plays, and they got to spend the whole year going, man, we're so close, we're just Aaron Rodgers away. Bucs fans, you didn't complain when you were holding up the trophy. Seattle fans, you weren't complaining when Russ was winning a Super Bowl and getting to a second one. Privilege exists. But again, I would much rather the privilege of greatness, which Aaron Rodgers has been great. He's a 4-time MVP. He's accomplished pretty much everything you can do in the NFL. Am I the biggest fan of him? No, of course not. But let's not act like he just woke up today and was this person. He's been this person. Moving on from the NFL to, I love this. Baseball does not get a lot of time to shine, especially in opening blocks of the show. But there's a lot going right with the baseball playoffs. We are getting upsets. We're getting exciting series. We're getting exciting games. The Tigers are doing pitching chaos. Shohei Ohtani's hitting home runs. The Dodgers, Padres are going back and forth. Feels like a real rivalry. There's a lot to love right now about the current state of Major League Baseball's playoffs. What I don't love, and this is typical fans. Fans will find a way to ruin anything, even when a sport is at its high point. And this is the current high point for baseball that it's been in probably several years. Now, fans, some of which I may or may not live with, are complaining about the length of the series of the divisional round and the wild card round. That why should 162 games come down to just 2 losses and you're out? Here's the reality, fans. you will complain regardless. So we're not going to make rules to circumvent all complaining. We're just going to go with the most effective and efficient and the most exciting. We're not here to care about your complaining. If you're the better team, win the game. We complained we got a wild card game. And what did we do? We complained that your season's over in one game. Now there's a wild card round, and we complained that your season is over in 2 games. And now Dodger fans, they're playing the Padres. Dodgers have the bigger payroll. They have the best players. They have everything to their advantage, home field. And there's Dodger fans today complaining that it's not fair that it's only a 5-game series, not a 7. Oh, we beat them in a 7. Well, if you're that much better, beat them in a 5 or shut up. If you're that much better, stop letting Fernando Tatis homer every other at bat. If you're that much better, have your pitcher get through 5 innings without giving up 5 runs. At some point, this is professional sports. This is not Little League. This is not the minor league. This is not watching your nephew play on an AAU team. This is professional sports. If you are the better team, if you're the stronger team, the bigger team, whatever, you just win the game. If you're the better coach team, the better managed team, you're the team that's better at pitching, hitting, then prove it. Because all you're going to do is move the bar and find another reason to complain about. You don't like 7-game series because it's too long. You're not going to like 3-game series because they're too short. Stop. This is the most fun, the most exciting. We have potential upsets, but by the time this show is over, the Mets might have beaten the Phillies. And the Phillies, to me, were one of the 2 best teams in the National League all season long, them and the Dodgers. You could argue Philly was the best team in the National League, and I think it's exciting as hell that Mets fans are like, hey, we're that team this year. We're the team that is going to potentially upset the Phillies, and maybe we even upset whoever wins the Padres-Dodgers series. That's exciting. Those are storylines. Those are fun and entertaining things to talk about. If we didn't have the playoffs, and this goes for all sports, if we didn't have the playoffs in the formats that we had, we know the best team is already going to win whatever a skewed percentage of time because they're the better team. But do we think the NFL, which is one and done? Now, there's also health reasons why it needs to be one and done. But do we not think the career of Eli Manning is far more fascinating because he got hot for a couple one-and-done stretches, and now he's a 2-time Super Bowl winner instead of just Peyton Manning's little brother? Do we not think the Giants, when they had Tim Lincecum, Madison Bumgarner, a young Buster Posey, when they won 3 out of 5, but it was this win one year, be bad, win one year, be bad. Do we not think that was entertaining and more exciting because they got hot at the right time? Do we not think the last year the St. Louis Cardinals, the Albert Pujols, that run they went on? Look at last year with the Texas Rangers. Look at this year's Mets. Look at this year's Padres going against the big bad Dodgers. And I understand the Padres have a huge payroll too. The Padres have a lot of talent. But if we just made every series best of 7, then we skew the best team to win. They already win at a 60-70% clip. Now we're skewing to win at an 80-90% clip, and this is more fun and exciting for the average fan. And baseball is finally, it's the playoffs. It's the one time of the year they can really shine. They can really they can show how wonderful this game is. And you're gonna be the dude crying and complaining because it's a 5-game series, not a 7? I found myself starting to do this, and I realized I went to the Padres. I was watching Padres-Dodgers some friends last night, and I had a friend had asked me about it, and I was like, yeah, I kind of do think it's weird that it's a 5-game series when you have a 162-game regular season. And I realized, shut up. You just watched a fantastic game. Padres get out to a 6-1 lead. Teoscar Hernandez hits a grand slam to bring it within 1, and that tension that carried over the last 5 innings. I was like, I just watched an amazing baseball game, and I'm going to waste my time sitting here complaining? I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't do it. If you are going to be the fan that complains, guess what? That's probably just who you are, and that's probably who you'll always be. And there's no reason to be that person right now. Baseball's in a great place. This postseason has been amazing. Again, by the time this show is over, we might have the Mets upsetting the Phillies and on their way. And then by the time the night's over, the Mets might be on their way to go play the Padres in 2 teams who both upset the higher seeded team, and or we have Padres-Dodgers game 5, And that same kind of excitement that's built up in a Padres-Dodgers Game 7 is there in the Game 5. It's do or die. Let the sport live. And complaining fans, you're just complaining fans. Don't have time for it. Oh, man, there's a lot to talk about today. I think I heard the worst NBA take, and this is saying a lot, that I think I've ever heard in my life. And it comes from a player that I really enjoyed watching, but who was just on a heater with bad takes. It's incredible. It's also Wednesday, so we are going to be doing our power rankings, the 10 best teams in the NFL, according to me. And is good an eye test or stats? That's been a debate in sports the last probably 10, 15 years, almost going back to 20 years now. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. why do we watch sports? I love sports. I could watch football from the morning to nighttime. I could watch Christmas Day basketball morning to nighttime. I can watch a baseball marathon back to back. Do people watch sports just to go on Twitter and troll people, dare them to have a bad game? I hate ring culture. Yes, we acknowledge Michael Jordan 6 rings. We acknowledge Tom Brady 7 rings. Out of everybody last year, the only one allowed to be happy is the Texas Rangers. Also a Broncos fan. Maybe that's my disconnect. I still watch sports because I love watching sports. Don't ever lose that disconnect. Enjoy watching sports. Enjoy what you do. Love watching it. Won't ever give up on it. So, I was thinking about this, and this is, before we get into power rankings, the 49ers, Nick Bosa specifically, came out and said tomorrow is a must-win game for us. And the 49ers and Seahawks, they play tomorrow, and I don't know if, now the 49ers are still clearly talented, but I don't know if they realize they're no longer the team they used to be, and I don't know when athletes really understand this. And as someone who's not an athlete, I don't know if really it's my place to tell them when to understand this, but reality is this happens to every team. At one point, the 49ers were 8 to 9 all-pros on one roster. So much so, they were so overwhelmingly talented that even if Brock Purdy, who people have different opinions on, they were so overwhelmingly talented, Bosa, Warner, Hargrave, Tafunga, Trent Williams, Debo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, like they just had names and so much talent that it didn't really matter if you thought Brock Purdy was just an okay quarterback, which a lot of people did think and do still believe. They were clearly the best roster in the NFL. Even Philadelphia, who I think has the best GM in the sport and has a fantastic roster. San Francisco's was still better, and especially at their top end. But I don't think San Francisco is that roster anymore. And when Nick Bosa made these comments, it almost sounded like the way he said it, as if he said, yeah, man, this is a must-win game. We got to play well. I don't think the Niners anymore, and it's hard to tell exactly because those names still hold a lot of weight. They're no longer just a play well and we're for sure going to win kind of team. They are no longer so clearly better than the other team when they line up that there's no guarantee that that's just what they're like. If they just play okay or well, they're clearly going to beat the team on the other side of the field. I think back to, I was scarred when the Chargers, when I was growing up, at one point, the Chargers still in San Diego, they just got off, they were the off the bus team. They just got off the bus and they were better than you. Phillip Rivers, LT, Antonio Gates, Malcolm Floyd, Marcus McNeil, Sean Merriman, Sean Phillips, Antonio Cromartie, Nick Hardwick. Like, it was just, they just had a list of guys, again, similar to the 49ers, guys who just got off the bus and were better than you. And I was thinking, like, damn, like, that's just, you know, how this team, back then I didn't know how sports worked as well. And so it's like, how do you get all these players on one team? And the Niners have been that over the last several years. They've just been better than everybody. They've just been stronger than everyone, faster than everyone, had more good players, had more great players. And I think Nick Bosa still thinks that way about him. And he should. Again, not here to tell top-end athletes how to act or how they should feel. But if the Niners think they are still just get off the bus better than everybody, the stats don't show that. The play on the field doesn't show that. Fred Warner's probably the one guy, Fred Warner and Trent Williams, they're probably the two guys who it's like, okay, yeah, they still look like they're playing a different game. They still look like they are super elite. They still look they still look like the kind of guys who are clearly playing at a level that is above everybody else. Then, besides them, I don't see that from the safety. I don't see it from either receiver. Ayuk, who missed training camp, he looks like, what is he? We don't look. Ayuk does not look coming off no training camp like he looked at any point over the last 2 seasons. Debo's been much slower. So the 49ers, again, in our heads, it feels like, oh yeah, this has been one of the dominant teams. This has been one of the best teams in the league, so they should still be there. But it doesn't feel like it anymore. And I think that's reflective to a degree in my power rankings. So, of course, it is Wednesday. So, excuse me, we do have to get into our top 10 teams who is climbing up our step ladder. So, I'll be real honest with you. The bottom 6 teams, I think 10, 10, up until you get to 4. I don't feel like the bottom 6 can win a Super Bowl. Right now, I think there's 4 teams. If you were to put money on it, who do I think could actually win a Super Bowl? There's 4 teams. So, let's get started. At number 10, the Green Bay Packers. Look, the Packers, I think you have to treat them because of the few games that Jordan Love has played. You have to treat them like one of the teams that have a rookie quarterback. And so, to me, because Jordan Love's only played 10 games, 10 good games. 8 last year, 2 this year. And I feel like out of all the teams, which you're going to see, I did not include the Bears or Commanders because, again, I don't think what Washington is doing is sustainable. Jaden Daniels is going to eventually come back down to playing. And now he's playing exceptional. He's going to have a rookie-esque slump. So I don't think that is sustainable. And with the Packers, I'm just not quite as sold on Jordan Love. I still think this is more of a coaching job. The defense has obviously been playing well. But to me, this feels like basically a rookie quarterback, really well-coached team. But I still got to put him at number 10. People are probably going to say I'm going above and beyond, but the Denver Broncos are going to be 6-2. They play the banged-up Chargers this week, and then they have the Saints and Panthers. They're on a 3-game win streak. They're going to win their next week. It's going to be a 6-2 football team with a established head coach in Sean Payton, a defense right now, to me, that is number 1 in the NFL, as well as the receivers are coming along, an offense that is making its way, maybe the best special teams in the sport, especially when it comes to covering kicks. Like, this is going to be a 6-2 football team. I know it's biased right now. It's going above and beyond. This team is going to move up, so I feel confident having them at number 9 right now. Let's examine this in a few weeks. And number 8 is the Bucs. Yes, Denver beat the Bucs, but I think if you look at the Bucs, the way Baker Mayfield is playing, Baker Mayfield is, again, September MVP is a stupid conversation, but he is at a consistent level, and he has been playing consistently like an MVP-esque level quarterback going back to last year. This team made the playoffs. This is a team nobody really gave, if you want to take the end of the Tom Brady era, no one really gave them a chance to rebound, and Baker has stepped in, stepped up, and just proven himself and continued to do great. So the Bucs right now have number 8. I'm not willing to put the Vikings much higher. I just can't quite do it. I apologize to Sam Darnold earlier this week. He was my hard left. His thing I was probably the most wrong about. But I still, again, similar to the Packers, similar to the Broncos, I think this is a coaching job. And to me, the thing that feels the most, if you say like, oh, well, why does Denver get the benefit of the doubt? Denver doesn't. Denver is winning because their defense that I believe is sustainable. They're not winning because of their quarterback. Right now, Green Bay and Minnesota, while it is coaching elevated, are winning to a large degree, more than I believe Denver is due to their quarterback. And I just don't see Sam Darnold or Jordan Love. Jordan Love I have mixed feelings on. I especially don't see Sam Darnold continuing this level of play throughout the season. Number 5 is the Bills, and this is just, I'm probably going to, this could potentially be one of my worst takes of the season. I know they got smacked their last 2 games, but there's something there that I just see with Josh Allen that makes me go, oh yeah, He's still clearly one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL. He is still clearly one of the guys. He just has it figured out at the quarterback position. He does everything right. And to me, are you really that bad if the only 2 teams you can't beat are the Chiefs and the Ravens? Like, if we're being honest about it, that's the only 2 teams I feel like in the AFC especially, because I think they could beat Houston. Even though I understand Josh got knocked out of that game, and I understand he played 9 of 30, he played like crap. But I feel like if you get to the playoffs, I feel confident they could beat Houston. I feel confident they could beat any team that's just not Baltimore or Kansas City. So the Bills, maybe this turns out to be my worst take. Who knows? And number 4 is the 49ers. Despite everything I just said, even though they are probably no longer the clear most talented team, they're not running out 8-9, currently playing all pro level guys. Again, this is in my mind. I can't quite take them out of the top 5 because especially during a playoff stretch, to me, this still feels like at some point they're going to get McCaffrey back. At some point, I believe Ayuk is going to play up to his level. At some point, I believe Debo is going to step up again. Trent Williamson's played great this season. Fred Warner's played great this season. Bosa's going to start getting a consistent pass rush. Like, I just still believe this team, when it's all said and done, this is going to be one of the best teams in the NFL. The Texans are really good, man. C.J. Stroud is really good, man. Now, the Nico Collins injury, even if it only turns into the 4 weeks from the IR, that's still devastating. I also don't feel good about the fact that it went from day to day to week in about 24 to 48 hours. So that makes me have some questions and some pause, but still, this is a really, really good football team. This is C.J. Stroud, I've been talking about him all year, how highly I think about him. Houston Texans at number 4. And the only teams they cannot beat. And again, I feel like Buffalo could beat this team, but I still feel like the Texans are the better team. I think there's some matchup stuff there. The Lions at 3. Look, even though the last time we saw them, their defense played awful, Aiden Hutchinson right now is, if you look at the pressure stats, he is literally doing Myles Garrett-esque, T.J. Watt-esque, prime Von Miller. He is just dominating guys on the other line of scrimmage. He can blow up games by himself. So that even though the entirety of their defense is not playing all pro or Pro Bowl level or even good at some times, he is a one-man game wrecker. And I think that will continue to play out over the season, and that will also elevate other guys because he's getting this kind of pressure and he's getting to the quarterback this often. Like, he is incredible. At number 2, the Baltimore Ravens. Look, I said nobody has been a better poster child for 0-2 doesn't mean crap than the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, the Broncos have all started 0-2 and won their last 3, but the Ravens have won their last 3, and they've been dominant doing it. The Ravens have been kicking everyone's ass. Cowboys, Bills. Well, we saw it again last week against the Bengals. The way Lamar Jackson is playing, this is proof that when you get into those, you need to win another MVP, you need another storyline because we've already seen you play great. Lamar's arguably playing even better than he's had during either of his first 2 MVP seasons. How good you're playing, how great you're playing, that is always what's going to determine the MVP race. And the Ravens and Lamar Jackson are just kicking everybody's ass right now, and they're playing amazing. And so, yeah, the Ravens are at number 2. And for the first confident time all year at number 1, 400 yards of offense, did whatever they wanted to do, even with the fluky turnover. This was the first time, this was the Kansas City Chiefs A game on Monday night, standalone game, and they showed the world, hey, look, our offense can still do it. Our defense is clearly elite. We are the dynasty. We are the 2-time reigning champs. And again, I've been saying all year, until I see it with their offense, I don't believe it. And it was for the first time I got to see it again. So those are our top 10 teams stepping up on our stepping ladder. Kansas City's really good, man. And that A game, that was the scariest, I think, out of everybody in the NFL. And I think the Ravens are playing great. I think the Lions are playing great. The Niners, I still believe in overall talent. But again, like I said, those top 4, Texans, Lions, Ravens, Chiefs, those are the only teams right now I feel confident in winning a Super Bowl as currently constructed. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. So a theme I always talk about is optimism. I said this before the break. When you're a sports team, giving optimism, giving hope to your fan base, it's hard to say it's an obligation because it's a business, but it's what I would prefer. You know, I always say you could be bad and exciting, but don't be bad and boring. Like Williams, he only played the one series, put up the 70 yards, but he looked as advertised. Jaden Daniels, same thing. If you're Washington, and Washington we've talked about, total reboot. New owner, new coach, new executives, everything's brand new. They just took everything out and said, hey, look, this is who we are going forward. Jaden Daniels, he has the big throw down the sideline, which supposedly the story is he was able to audible out of. He had the touchdown run. He looked as advertised. Drake May probably had the least optimistic part. Not a lot of throws, not any of the huge wow plays that the first two guys made, but still, he didn't look bad. Penix looked solid. He looked like he was in control. Guy, J.J. McCarthy, same thing here. 2 touchdowns. He probably looked the best in comparison. My guy, Bo Nix, I got $40 on him for this year. 15 to 21, touchdown. He looked like, again, he looked like a guy who it's what they considered Bo Nix to be. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. So I heard maybe the worst take ever. Now, Gilbert Arenas, this is the unfortunate part about so many athletes being in the sports media space now, between podcasts, ESPN hiring a bunch of them, FS1 hiring a bunch of them, former athletes. And that is, man, some of them are just great at playing the sport. They don't feel like they're great at analyzing or talking about the sport. And so when Gilbert Arenas, who was genuinely one of my favorite players to watch growing up, like Agent Zero, he was fun as hell to watch, super exciting player, and genuinely one of the great players that probably, if he wasn't doing Gil's Arena, probably wouldn't be talked about, and that itself would be a shame that he's talked about more for these kind of takes than he is his playing career. But Gilbert was talking about Joel Embiid and how he said Embiid is probably actually the best player in the NBA, but because the NBA made this 65-game rule, we're not going to look back on Embiid and go, oh, because he doesn't have the accolades that a Jokic had or who he presumes some of these other players to have. Like, you know, he says, like, that's going to hurt him, and we're not going to view him the same. And he's like, Embiid beats Jokic's ass. And I'm like, hold up. I used to go back and forth with this. For anybody that's been a long-time listener, I used to go back and forth with Tony Will on this. And it was, at one point, the conversation was Embiid-Giannis. And I was on the Giannis side of it, and Will and Tony were on the Embiid side of it. And I said, look, Embiid is clearly supremely talented, clearly a great player. He is all that stuff, and no one can take that away from him. But do you see the problem with a guy who is not only injury prone, which availability is a skill. I don't care what anybody says or how we try to rewrite that one. And just the fact that, hey, you were in a competition with Giannis Antetokounmpo about who is the best player in the league. You lost that one. Giannis won a title. You still haven't gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals. And now you're in a secondary conversation with you and Nikola Jokic, and you've lost that one. Jokic is a 3-time MVP. Jokic has won a title. And to anybody that's actually aware of that storyline or that narrative, Embiid does not play Jokic. Embiid does not go up to Denver. Let me not yell. I don't want to be one of those people. But Embiid does not go to Denver and play. It's been several years since he's played an NBA game in Denver. He has decided to avoid playing Jokic more than any other primetime individual matchup we can think about. In no world, truly in no world is Embiid better than Nikola Jokic. In no world, in my opinion, was Embiid ever better than Giannis Antetokounmpo. But because skill is truly a thing that we look at, and skill is not something that stats can measure. Like, there's this weird convo with Embiid. I just don't think anybody really wants to, or has ever really broken it down correctly. I believe at the end of the day, good is an eye test. I do. I believe good and great is an eye test. I don't know LeBron James' total overall numbers or his career stats. I used to be that kid where I loved learning all the stats, and to sometimes I still do. But when I'm watching the game, I don't know if LeBron has 27 or if he has 17. I don't know if he has 7 rebounds or he has 15. I don't know if he has 6 assists or 12 assists. I can watch the flow of the game, and I can see him dominating the game, especially in his prime, both ends of the floor. I can see that. I don't need to be told that. I don't need the numbers to prove that. I can just watch, and I can see. Same thing with Mike. Same thing with Kobe. Same thing with any great player. Jokic, Giannis. Embiid is also great. But Embiid, despite the fact he should be we can just see it. And that was always one of the things Tony and Will used to tell me. I can just see that he's better than Giannis because he has spin moves and a jump shot and he's more skilled. But then when it always came time to make the conversation or the actual argument for Embiid, not just Tony and Will, but just the general consensus, well, look at his numbers. He's averaging 34, 35 points a game. He's doing the most points a game at center since Shaq. He's shooting the best ever at the position. He's doing like a guy who should be skill-based, which is an eye test thing. We're arguing solely off the basis of his numbers. Again, if we could do everything just off the basis of numbers, LeBron's the greatest player ever, and it's not particularly close with any human who's ever played the game of basketball. If we're just going off numbers, Dirk Nowitzki, who's one of the 5 greatest power forwards ever, he comes up short compared to other guys. I'm sorry, no, Dirk shows up strong because he's 6th all-time leading scorer. Charles Barkley, who we know was dominant, who we saw, I'm not old enough, but who you got to see, he was a skill test. So how come Embiid, we use the quote-unquote, he's the skilled player, but you need the numbers for the really staunch Embiid defenders to back him up? And for Gilbert saying he has the 65 games take away his accolades, okay, so let's say maybe he lost out on an MVP. I don't think he did, but let's use that hypothetically. Does Gilbert Arenas think that if Joel Embiid performed in the playoffs to the level that everybody has this expectation of him to do we think that his legacy would be different if he had 2 or 3 rings and 2 or 3 finals MVPs, but he missed out on regular season MVPs because he wasn't available? He was only played 64 games. Let's give him that many. I know his stats were crazy for 39 games, but part of the reason why they limited or made that rule to go against a player like Embiid is not because it quote unquote punishes him. The fact is, to put up whatever numbers in 39 games, pretty simple, easier to do than if you had to play 80 games or 70 games. Because none of these guys are really playing 81, 82 games a year unless you're Mikal Bridges. And that's just because he just refuses to sit down. So, and again, if Embiid was dominant in the playoffs, which is where I think really which is really where he gets punished the most, in my opinion, is that we don't view him as a great player in that same regard because we haven't seen him do it in the playoffs. Like, is Gilbert, like, take your argument and, like, really, really think about it. Don't just say it, and because you're Gilbert Arenas and you played the game at a high level, that just means instant credibility. Take what you said and actually play it out. Do we look at Embiid differently if he has multiple titles? Of course we do, because that would show dominance. That would show the player. Again, Shaq is the perfect example, especially when talking about Embiid. Shaq is so high in the NBA hierarchy of great players, even though his peak against the other guys that are in that top 10 to 15 conversation is nowhere near the other guys. But we don't care that Shaq only had 1 regular season MVP. He had 3 finals MVPs and a 3-peat. If Embiid had 3 finals MVPs and a 3-peat, guess what? We'd look at him differently. It's not the 65-game rule. It's not because we're unfairly comparing him against Jokic. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Before we end the show, I want to have a fun little, so I had Tony do this earlier in the week, and so I think it's only fair that I have to do it now, which is reacting. We are now basically somewhere between a third of the season done for the NFL, and so I want to talk about the teams that I feel the worst about and teams I feel best about. Well, not really. Teams I was the most right about and teams I was the most wrong about. Now, I don't really want to spend too much time on wrong, mainly because the records are going to display wrong, right? Like, I was clearly wrong on the Bengals. They're not going to get to probably 10.5 wins unless they literally win out besides like 2 games. So, obviously, I'm going to be wrong on that. But if you just kind of sit here and you go through each division, I'm probably going to end up wrong on the Chiefs because they would have to play 500 football the rest of the year to end at 11 wins. I did think that was possible, but hey, I feel great about the Raiders pick. I feel great about the Chargers pick. Denver, of course, we're going to the Super Bowl. Let's go. In the East, I feel really good about that. Now, unfortunately, the Dolphins, I thought the Dolphins were going to play to this level. It is unfortunate that they're probably only going to end up at their under because of the unfortunate injury to Tua. I still think the Bills are going to rebound, so I feel good about that number. In the South, man, I had under on a lot of these teams. The Colts, Titans, Jaguars, I feel great about that. Houston's 4-1, over 9.5. I feel great about that. Ravens, over 10.5. Feel good about that. Under for both the Browns and Steelers. I had the Browns at 8.5 wins. Like, what are we doing? Odds makers, what are we doing? Oh, my gosh. In the NFC West, this is another unfortunate one. I'm going to think forever that I was right about this Rams team. The unfortunate part of this Rams team is that they just fell apart. Like, that's their reality, is they fell apart. They're just too many injuries. I think the fact they're still competing, to me, and these games are close, feels like, okay, cool. We have, means I was on the right track. But unfortunately, they're probably not going to get to 9.5 wins. Then the Cardinals and Seahawks, both under 7.5. Seahawks got off to a hot start, but I feel like that's starting to cool off and play out. I'm probably going to end up wrong on the Eagles. I did not think this lowly of Nick Sirianni originally, but I just, through 4 weeks, I can't look at him and say he's a good head coach. I still think they have incredible talent on both sides of the ball, but I can't look at him and say he's a good head coach, and I just don't think they're going to get to that 11 wins. I think there's a really good chance he's fired by the end of the year. Washington, this is the one I liked a lot about Washington. I did not think, and I don't think this is sustainable for Jaden Daniels, and this is not to be dismissive of him or how great of a start he's had, but I don't believe he's going to play like this all 17 games. Washington is currently, if you look at their first down rate and their conversion on drives of touchdowns or points, they would be the greatest offense in the history of ever. I don't think, as much as I like Jaden Daniels, I don't think that's going to happen. So I think Washington will start to come back down to the norm. Falcons, I feel great about, over 9.5. The Bucks, I'm glad to be wrong on this one. I enjoy watching Baker Mayfield play football, especially when he loses to the Broncos. But seriousness, I've enjoyed watching Baker play. I'm excited for the Bucks that they're going to, I believe, go over this total. Evans, Godwin, this is just a fun team. This is a fun team to watch. Panthers, it's all bad. Saints, it was a cool first 2 weeks. The Vikings, well, unless they totally collapse and don't win another game, or only win one game the rest of the season, I'm going to be wrong here. It's okay. This is the best division in football right now, the NFC North. The Bears, I had it under 9.5. That I still think is plausible. Again, Caleb has been playing better and better. They are making things more, I'm going to say more easy on them, but they're making it, easy is the right word. I think the connotation comes off wrong, though. They should be trying to make it easier on Caleb Williams, because even if he is the most talented quarterback ever, why force him to try to prove that talent week in, week out? Yeah. So I think the teams I feel that have, I'll phrase it the same way I phrased Tony. Teams that have won in the AFC, won in the NFC, that have overperformed. In the AFC, it's obviously the Broncos. I don't even think it's debatable at this point in time. In my opinion, the best defense in the sport. Bo Nix has looked better and better coming off a 3-touchdown game. I think he continues to put up numbers against these lesser teams. The Denver Broncos are going to be 6-2, and we are going to start a conversation. I've already started it, but the rest of the world will have to hear it. And then in the NFC, it's got to be the Commanders. I do think the Commanders, even though I think their offense will slow down or go back to normal, what Jaden Daniels has done is nothing short of incredible. And while there is a lot of time left in the season, he will have rookie moments. I think getting off to this 4-1 start sets them up. If they just, again, if you get off to an elite start, 4-1, 5-0, and then you just play 500 football the rest of the way, that's a 10-win football team, an 11-win football team. And if you're the Washington Commanders, you would absolutely take that. Don't act like you are some high-end, mighty franchise. You would absolutely take getting to 10, 11 wins your first season with a rookie quarterback. So, yeah, man. With that being said, I appreciate everybody for tuning in today. We are back Sunday morning. Yeah, we're going to have Tony's ticket. So for all of you that want to bet on your games, we are going to be doing a glass preview right before the games start. We are live from 8 to 9:30 West Coast.